Chapter 81 Witness the Destruction of a World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Don't stare at it too long. The big guy barked suddenly. Shinji snapped his gaze away. For a second, he felt drawn to the darkness beyond the sky, an urge to get a better look at whatever was out there. The big guy took another drag on his cigar. Don't sweat it too much. This thing won't mess with you or your world until this one's completely gone. Still spooked, Shinji asked, "What is it?" "A world eater. Some call it overlord, others natural disaster, and still others doomsday." The big guy glanced at the sky, then quickly looked away again. Shinji's face went pale. World eater, just hearing those names, overlord, natural disaster, doomsday, gave him a sense of the monster's sheer terror. He couldn't believe something like that existed in the universe. After pulling himself together a bit, Shinji asked, "Why is it targeting this world?" "Bad luck," the big guy said, puffing on his cigar. "Anybody can get caught. It's just a matter of time." Shinji couldn't help but ask, "Isn't there anything you can do?" The big guy looked at Shinji, grinned, and said, "Maybe. But I wouldn't know." Shinji looked around at the desolate landscape. "Where's this world's lamp bearer? Why isn't he fighting back?" "You mean that idiot?" Seemingly amused by Shinji's question, the big guy casually found a charred rock and sat down. "Oh, he fought back, all right. Just used a real dumb way to do it." "Dumb how? What else would you call it?" Grinning, the big guy said, "The dude knew he couldn't stop the Overlord alone, so he blabbed about the Overlord's attack and the coming end of the world to everyone." "You mean, to gather the world's strength? And then?" Shinji didn't think that was a stupid plan at all. It sounded like a desperate move, born of desperation. "Then they all teamed up to build 3 defense systems." Shinji pressed, "And then?" The big guy spread his hands and shrugged. "Didn't you see it? The spread of the pollution just made the Overlord lock onto the world faster. It could have lasted tens, hundreds of years, but because of that moron, the end's coming early." Shinji fell silent. He was starting to piece together what had happened to this world. Getting targeted by the Overlord was clearly the start of a tragedy, but this world's lamp bearer didn't just sit around and wait to die. He ignored the pollution and told everyone about the Overlord's attack, hoping to unite the world against it, and they failed. Now, the world was about to become food for the Overlord, but Shinji couldn't shake the feeling that the lamp bearer wasn't an idiot. He'd just chosen to go down fighting instead of slowly fading away. In this world, getting everyone to pull together must have been a real challenge. Not everyone can stay brave when things look hopeless. Shinji was also starting to understand why the lamp had labeled this world as a safe zone. Because the world was on its way out, it would no longer be connected to other worlds, and the pollution wouldn't spread. So, lamp bearers from other worlds could drop by for a short visit, to trade, or share information. Boom. Suddenly, there was a deafening roar in the sky. Shinji looked up to see chunks of the sky crumbling, and the darkness beyond pouring in. Not far off, the 7 lamp bearers in their black robes wrapped up their transactions and disappeared into the wasteland amidst flickering lights. The big guy with the cigar said flatly, "This is it." Shinji never imagined his first invasion would let him witness the end of a world firsthand. He watched the sky crack apart, the ground split open, and everything around him fall to pieces. The shock was indescribable. Seeing the look on Shinji's face, the big guy said, "Rookie, you should get going." Shinji nodded. He really wanted to leave. He could already feel the waves of malice seeping in from the darkness. It was a power that scared him on a gut level. He was way too weak to face that kind of malice right now, so, he took a step back and pulled his lamp out of the red cloud cloak. Even though the big guy hadn't shown any hostility and had even answered a lot of his questions, Shinji wasn't about to let his guard down. As he reached for the lamp, he kept an eye on the big guy, ready for anything, but the big guy ignored him, just staring up at the sky. By now, all the other lamp bearers were gone. Only Shinji and the big guy remained on the broken wasteland, so, Shinji couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you leaving?" The big guy suddenly said, "Remember that idiot I was telling you about earlier?" Shinji asked, "The lamp bearer of this world?" The big guy nodded, then smiled at Shinji. Ha! That's me. Shinji was stunned, staring blankly at the big guy. He was the lamp bearer of this world. Shinji never would have guessed it. He couldn't believe the guy had just casually told him the reason his world was being destroyed. At the same time, Shinji noticed that the last embers in the lamp on the big guy's belt were about to burn out. He quickly glanced down at his own lamp. Could it be that once the embers are completely gone, the world loses its protection? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. He immediately understood how valuable the embers were. As long as they lasted, even the Overlord couldn't invade, but once they were gone, he glanced at the sky. The darkness was already seeping in. The big guy waved him off impatiently. Get out of here. This is my tomb. One more person would just make it crowded. Now that he knew who the big guy really was, Shinji relaxed a bit. He knew this was probably his last chance, so he quickly asked, is there really no way to fight the Overlord? The big guy looked surprised. He hadn't expected Shinji to ask that before leaving. Rumor has it there's a lamp bearer out there who actually beat an Overlord, but it's probably just a story. Just then, Shinji's lamp flared with light, enveloping him. As the light pulled him away, Shinji shouted, if other lamp bearers keep invading my world and won't talk to me, do you know why? The big guy gave a contemptuous smirk. Ha! That guy's world is probably on the Overlord's menu, too. First one's done. Hit me with a recommendation, a monthly ticket, a follow. End of this chapter. Chapter 82 Go Your Own Way. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Inside the apartment, a shaken Shinji gasped for breath. A world had just been obliterated before his eyes, no. More accurately, consumed by some Overlord. A monster that feeds on worlds. The very thought sent shivers down his spine. He even worried about being tainted by it. Talk about PTSD. Eventually, he calmed down a bit. He stripped off his mask and the Akatsuki cloak. Finding his back drenched, he showered, then slumped onto the bed. Moonlight streamed through the window, blanketing the bed in silver. Only then did the shock subside, his mind clearing of fear. He replayed the strongman's last words, his eyes narrowing. The reason the lamp bearer from the Demon Slayer world was invading the ninja world, trying to anchor it, was that the Overlord had targeted their world. That explained everything. Realizing their world was marked, the Demon Slayer lamp bearer chose a different path than the strongman. The strongman rallied his world to fight the Overlord head-on, but the Demon Slayer lamp bearer opted to tether other worlds to theirs. Shinji couldn't tell if the other wanted the ninja world to share their burden or if they planned to sacrifice the ninja world as a meal for the Overlord. Either way, the Demon Slayer lamp bearer wanted to drag the ninja world into this mess. The jerk. Shinji felt a surge of anger and fear. If the Demon Slayer world was already on the Overlord's menu and was trying to anchor the ninja world, it was only a matter of time before the Overlord set its sights on them too. The thought of the ninja world facing the same fate filled him with despair. What do I do? His newfound calm evaporated. He'd seen the Overlord's terror firsthand. He was an ant before it. How could he possibly fight back? Then, he remembered the rumor the strongman had mentioned. A powerful lamp bearer had defeated the Overlord. The strongman dismissed it as false, but Shinji now believed it could be true. During their brief encounter, he'd instinctively gathered information, though he hadn't realized it at the time. For example, his gut told him the strongman posed no real threat. That's why he'd been wary but open to conversation when the strongman initiated it. It showed that lamp bearers varied in strength across worlds. Among them, Shinji was a rookie, but with 2 pairs of Mangekyo Sharingan, he might hold his own against some senior lamp bearers. It often depended on the world. In worlds with limited or no supernatural abilities, a lamp bearer could only reach the peak of that world's potential. Advancement often required trading with lamp bearers from other worlds, and embers, the currency of trade, were not only the source of lamp power but also the last defense of their world. Shinji's own lamp held only a fifth of its capacity in embers, which meant he couldn't afford to spend too many embers trading the ninja world. was special because chakra and natural energy allowed for a much higher supernatural ceiling than other worlds. If Shinji could reach the top of the ninja world, it wouldn't guarantee victory against the Overlord, but it would give him a fighting chance. Reaching the level of bloodline limit meant Shinji could potentially do what the Overlord did, cross the universe and absorb planetary energy. That was his advantage. And there had to be more than one lamp bearer with his innate advantages in the universe, making the rumor about a lamp bearer defeating the Overlord plausible. I can't give up. I still have time. Shinji rallied. According to the strongman, a world targeted by the Overlord wasn't destroyed instantly. As long as the pollution wasn't actively spread, there could be a long grace period, even if the Demon Slayer lamp bearer expedited the Overlord's arrival. Shinji had a lamp. It still had embers, enough to last for years, maybe even a decade or two, time enough for him to get stronger. He began to organize his thoughts. He had 4 pairs of Mangekyo Sharingan, some more damaged than others. Even discarding the unusable ones, he could still try for the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Restoring 2 half-damaged and 1 completely destroyed Mangekyo Sharingan would give him 2 pairs of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Then, he could use the Susanoo lamp ability to fuse them into one, creating an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan with ultimate power. Even without the chakra of Azura Otsutsuki's reincarnation, such an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan should be able to unlock the Rinnegan. And with a pair of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan fueled by the ultimate Yin release chakra, transplanting Hashirama cells, whether directly or via White Zetsu, would be less risky, because based on the cases of Madara Uchiha, Obito Uchiha, and Danzo, Sharingan could check and balance Hashirama cells, likely due to the interplay of Yin and Yang chakra. The more potent the Yin release chakra, the better the chance of surviving the transplant. And with the Rinnegan, he could copy Obito or Madara's method of collecting tailed beasts and resurrecting the 10 tails, or find another way to achieve Bloodline Snare. Bloodline Snare. Shinji focused intently. The strongman chose to resist the Overlord by rallying the world's power. The Demon Slayer lamp bearer chose to sacrifice other worlds to escape. Shinji would forge his own path. He would save the world his way. Chapter 83 The Gentleman. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gathering his negative emotions, Shinji meticulously planned his next move. He knew that even to reach the summit, he had to focus on the path right in front of him, one step at a time. Fragrant phosphorus, he murmured. Xianglin was key to everything. Her potential held the key to recovering the damaged or lost Kaleidoscope Sharingan, but before he could approach her, Shinji had something to do. He bit his finger, initiating the summoning jutsu. Bang star. A puff of white smoke erupted, revealing Briquettes. The little cat, mid-lick of its fur, grumbled, "What are you trying to swipe this time?" Shinji just stared. Briquettes sighed dramatically. "Not stealing. So it's spying again. Ugh, always the hard jobs." Shinji cleared his throat, slightly embarrassed. "Ahem, this time it's different." Briquettes fixed him with a look. Shinji explained, "I need to get to Grass Village, but I can't just walk in. I need you to go ahead and then use reverse summoning to bring me over." "Grass Village? That's heading into foreign territory." Briquettes hesitated. Shinji frowned. "What's wrong? You lost or something? Please. I know the way." Briquettes puffed out its chest. "Leave it to me." Shinji suddenly felt a wave of doubt about entrusting this to Briquettes, but he really had no better options. Even with Briquette's speed, it would take at least a week to reach the vicinity of Grass Village, assuming everything went smoothly. He gave the cat his instructions, released the summoning, and sent it on its way to pack. After dismissing Briquettes, Shinji considered the leukocytes. Though Deidara's harvested leukocytes were safer than the first-generation cells, the risk of transplanting them was still significant. To get Xianglin's cooperation, he needed to show her he had her best interests at heart first. "Once I rescue Xianglin's mother and Deidara gets the leukocytes, I'll broach the subject of the leukocyte transplant with Xianglin." Shinji was confident Xianglin would agree. Her Uzumaki clan's vitality and her rare healing abilities would greatly reduce the risks of transplantation compared to an average person. Besides, it would be a huge upgrade for her. If it worked, she would have the Uzumaki clan's near-immortal body, the Thousand-Hand Clan's near-immortal body, and traits of the sacred tree. If she unlocked her full potential, her near-immortal body alone could rival Otsutsuki Azura, who inherited the Sage of the Six Paths own. He knew how to help her unlock that potential. Wood style could affect the sacred tree traits in her blood. Wood style needed a powerful near-immortal body to sustain itself, so, in the process of mastering it, Xianglin would instinctively unlock the hidden power of the near-immortal body in her blood. It was just like Shinji's use of the Susanoo light to control other people's eyes. The very act of controlling them was a form of chakra control training, which was why he had learned medical ninjutsu so quickly. He was training his chakra control all the time. His eyelids felt heavy. He'd sparred with Sasuke, rushed to intercept the invaders, and witnessed the destruction of a world. He couldn't keep his eyes open any longer. He flopped over and fell fast asleep. The next morning, Shinji arrived at the Ninja Academy, yawning. After finishing the morning's cultural class, he rushed to the lab to assist Kaoru Kusanagi, completing 2 surgeries. Whether it was his superb chakra manipulation, his more mature mind, or something else, his talent for medical ninjutsu impressed the entire medical class. Even Kaoru Choudao, who had initially been critical of him, now praised him to anyone who would listen. Shinji knew his own limitations. He was still a beginner in medical ninjutsu. He was nowhere near Tsunade's level and still lacked in skill compared to average medical nin. He wasn't blinded by the praise. Instead, he absorbed every bit of knowledge he could. In the evening, he headed alone to his usual training ground, Clang Star. Before entering, he heard the sound of metal clashing. Shinji was surprised to find anyone in such a remote location. Inside, he saw Bai and Xianglin sparring. They stopped as soon as they saw him. Bai stepped forward to explain. Shinji, Xianglin and I just ran into each other. Xianglin nodded at Shinji and turned to leave. They seemed to consider the place his private training ground, and they didn't want him to be upset. That makes you look even more suspicious, Shinji thought to himself. Their behavior made him want to bang his head against a wall. Hold up, Shinji stopped Xianglin before she could sneak away. Xianglin froze. Shinji glanced at her, taking her in. She wore dark goggles, which was unusual, but hey, some ninjas wore masks all the time. A small pouch hung at her waist, probably containing loot salvaged from Gaki's body. Sensing Shinji's scrutiny, Bai worried he might notice something and quickly spoke up. Shinji, wanna spar? Shinji said, why did you try to bail when you saw me? What? Xianglin looked startled. Stay put, Shinji said, then turned away from Xianglin and strode into the center of the training ground. Xianglin looked at Shiro questioningly. Bai smiled, nodded, and whispered, Shinji is a really nice guy. Just stay. By letting Xianglin stay, Shinji was implicitly welcoming her into his little group, especially with Shinji's current reputation as a genius at the Ninja Academy. It wasn't easy to join his inner circle, especially for a loner like Xianglin. Tossing his coat onto a bench, Shinji turned to Bai. Enough with the chatter. Let's go, Bai grinned. Bring it on. Chapter 84. Just you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bang, bang, bang. Instantly, the quiet training ground erupted with the sounds of punches and kicks. Knowing Bai's history, Shinji didn't pull any punches during their sparring session. Even so, he still couldn't break through Bai's defenses. After a long exchange, they called it a draw. Huff, Shinji gasped, thinking to himself, Bai was already strong, and after snagging some new abilities, he'd improved even more. If Shinji didn't use his Mangekyo Sharingan, he'd definitely lose. Catching his breath, Shinji turned to Karen, who was watching from the sidelines. You're up. Let's go around. Karen looked surprised, pointing at herself. Me? Shinji waved her over. Come on. He'd been trying to figure out how to get Karen more involved in their little group so he could keep tabs on how well the half-destroyed Mangekyo Sharingan in her eye sockets was healing. That's why he took the chance to let her stick around. He considered Karen his most important investment right now, caring about her even more than himself. When Karen stepped onto the training field, he acted casual, asking, So, how are your hand-to-hand skills? Terrible. Karen quickly shook her head. Actually, she was about average in her class. but compared to Shinji, she was way behind. Shinji's expression tightened, and he suddenly lunged forward. Karen panicked, dodging and blocking. After a few exchanges, Shinji noticed that her reaction time wasn't bad, but she hesitated before attacking, seeming confused. Classic lack of confidence. He'd made the same mistake when he first sparred with Bai. It wasn't until he built up confidence that he overcame it. Shinji then tried attacking from Karen's blind spot, and her reactions were noticeably slower, so he stopped. Just as he suspected, Karen's sage body alone wasn't enough to fully restore the damaged Mangekyo. It was only preventing further decay. Stepping back, Shinji said, "Don't neglect taijutsu. It sharpens your instincts and builds courage." Karen nodded, dazed. Just then, Sasuke strolled into the training ground, hands in his pockets. "Knew I'd find you here," he said to Shinji. Shinji asked, "What do you want?" Sasuke glanced at Bai and Karen before fixing his gaze on Shinji. "You won't improve practicing with them. Shinji, spar with me from now on." Shinji couldn't help but chuckle. Bai could easily beat Sasuke at his current level. And even the weaker Karen had a pair of Mangekyo Sharingan eyes in her head. Sasuke was definitely underestimating them. Seeing Shinji laugh, Sasuke frowned. "What's so funny?" Shinji didn't explain. "I've been studying medical ninjutsu lately. I probably won't have much time for sparring. Find someone else." Sasuke looked annoyed. Bai, remembering his mission from Kurigakure, quickly offered, "Sasuke, I could be your training partner." Sasuke gave him a dismissive look. "You? Forget it." With that, he turned and left the training ground. Shinji continued to practice with Bai for a while. After working up a good sweat, he said goodbye to Bai and Karen and left the field alone. Karen sighed in relief after Shinji was gone. Bai said, "Once you get to know him, you'll see that Shinji's actually easy to get along with." Karen agreed. "I can tell. He treats me differently than others. He doesn't see me as an outsider." Bai felt the same way. Just as Shinji felt comfortable around Bai also felt comfortable around Shinji. Karen felt a pang of regret. "Too bad we can't tell him who we really are." "Yeah, sometimes I wish Shinji could join Akatsuki," Bai said. After a pause, he shook his head. "But then I think, he's been through enough already. Let it go." Karen pushed her emotions aside. "How's your new power coming along?" Bai didn't answer, but held out his palm to Karen. Without a seal, a water orb appeared in his hand. It shifted shapes, then instantly froze into an ice skate, radiating cold air. "Wow!" Karen exclaimed. Bai dispersed the skate and asked, "What about you?" Karen looked dejected. "Fusing water and earth chakra is too hard. I have no idea where to start." Bai considered this. "Then let me teach you the water-style nature transformation first." Karen asked, "Is it hard?" Bai shook his head. "Not at all. It's easy." Back at the apartment, Shinji sat on his bed, activating his sensory technique. After focusing for a moment, he reluctantly deactivated it. He could only sense Bai and Karen nearby. That meant Deidara hadn't succeeded, or hadn't arrived at their agreed-upon location, but it had only been a day since he gave Deidara the mission, which was normal. Deidara and Sasori were partners, and they might not be able to easily contact Zetsu. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his eye sockets, and he instinctively covered them with his hands. "It's happening more often," he thought, his face darkening. His chakra was draining away, and this constant loss was fueling his anxiety. Knowing that dwelling on it would only make things worse, he tried to distract himself. "The range of my sensory technique is still too small. I wonder if it'll expand after I fuse the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Too bad I don't know what the other eye does." Then, he thought of the pair of Mangekyo Sharingan in Karen's eyes. Like his grandmother's Mangekyo, they'd also lost one technique, and the remaining one was relatively weak. That was probably why their chakra had been preserved so well. The remaining technique of those eyes was called Susanoo Enhancement, and it did just that, enhance the power of the Susanoo. But for the original owner of the eyes, who only had one Mangekyo left, the Susanoo was too costly to use, so the technique was useless. but for Shinji, it was different. If he could fuse a pair of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and control the Mangekyo containing the Susanoo enhancement, his Susanoo would become incredibly powerful. Chapter 85 Grass Ninja Village, Part 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 85, Grass Ninja Village, RD Update. In the days that followed, Shinji hit ninja school in the mornings, learned medical ninjutsu at noon, sparred with Shiro and Karen at night, and then came home late to try and activate his Jibi to find Didera. Life was busy, but fulfilling. Soon, 9 days had passed. That night, Shinji tried to activate Jibi again, but still couldn't sense Didera. Just as he gave up, he suddenly felt a summoning, a psychic link. He knew it was Cobalt trying to reach him. Quickly making a shadow clone to stay in the apartment, he accepted the reverse summoning, *bang, in a puff of white smoke, Shinji materialized. Cobalt bounded over, looking at Shinji with big, sad eyes. Looking around, Shinji asked, "Why are you 2 days late?" Cobalt whined, "Do you know how tough it is for a kitten to cross borders?" "Look, my paws are killing me," Shinji sighed, "we'll call it a work-related injury." The sadness vanished from Cobalt's face. He hopped onto Shinji's shoulder and pointed into the distance. "Look, Grass Ninja Village is over there." Shinji followed Cobalt's direction and finally spotted the village hidden behind the trees. Cobalt asked, "Shinji, what are we snatching from Grass Village this time?" Shinji flicked Cobalt's head. "Quiet. Hide in my shadow. It's go time." "Okay." Cobalt obediently vanished into Shinji's shadow. Shinji moved like a wraith, heading toward Grass Village. Soon, he reached a dense forest on the outskirts. Observing Grass Village under the cover of night, he'd done his homework. While not one of the 5 great ninja villages, Grass Village was still a well-known power in the ninja world, with a solid system for training and recruiting ninjas. If they mobilized their entire country, they could field an army of thousands. So even with his Mangekyo Sharingan, Shinji couldn't just barge in. Besides, he didn't have to. After lurking for a while, he found a target, a middle-aged ninja heading back to Grass Village, wearing the village's forehead protector, *swish, in a blur. Shinji blocked the ninja's path. Perhaps because he was so close to home, the ninja wasn't too alert. He just stared at Shinji and asked, "Who's there?" Shinji met his gaze and activated the Mangekyo Sharingan. Instantly, the man's expression went blank, leading him into the woods. Shinji began his genjutsu interrogation. The grass ninja's name was Daisuke, a chunin. He'd just finished a mission escorting a merchant and was heading back to the village. Through the genjutsu, Shinji learned the layout of Grass Village. Then Shinji knocked Daisuke unconscious, tied him up, and used the transformation technique to take his place. After a moment's thought, he took a kunai and cut Daisuke's body, smearing some of the blood on himself to look injured. Satisfied that everything looked right, he sped towards Grass Village. "Hey, Shio you're on duty tonight." Arriving at the gate, he greeted the guards by name, using the information he'd gotten from Daisuke's memories. Seeing the blood on his body, one of the guards asked, "What happened?" "Trouble on your mission." Shinji shook his head. "Ran into a rogue ninja. Bad luck. Tough break. Get yourself patched up." Shinji nodded and casually walked into Grass Village. This village clearly thought it was the strongest village outside the Big Five, so their security was a little lax, but it made sense. Smaller forces generally wouldn't mess with a village like this, and the Big Five needed buffer zones like Grass and Rain villages. They wouldn't attack them without a good reason, so things got comfortable over time. Following the information he'd extracted, Shinji turned through the village streets until he reached a simple shack. Could it be here? He was skeptical. Grass Village had sent Karen to Konoha for a secret operation. You'd think Karen's mom, someone to blackmail Karen with, would be under heavy guard, but this rundown shack didn't look like a high-security location. Suppressing his doubts, Shinji knocked on the door. After a long pause, a weak voice answered, "Come in, please." The door opened, and a pale, gaunt woman bowed to Shinji, saying humbly, "Sorry to keep you waiting." "You're..." Shinji hesitated. The woman stepped aside. "Please, come in." Shinji walked into the room, observing the woman carefully. The room was bare. Just a bed, a table, a few old boxes, and a set of clothes hanging on the wall. The clothes were surprisingly clean, out of place in the dilapidated room. The clothes were tiny, like something a 5 or 6-year-old would wear, definitely not the woman's. While Shinji was looking around, the woman held out her arm, covered in scars, bowed her head, and said, "Please, let me heal your wounds." Looking at the woman's scarred arm, Shinji was overcome with emotion. He doubted her identity at first because she didn't have the signature red hair of the Uzumaki clan, instead having white hair with strands of light red. But seeing her outstretched arm, he knew this was Karen's mother. To drain someone with the Uzumaki clan's life force like this. He was shocked. Karen's special healing ability came from her mother. To see an Uzumaki clansman, not even 30, drained and ghostly, he couldn't imagine how Grass Village had treated her. Seeing Shinji hadn't bitten her yet, the woman thought he couldn't find a spot, so she held out her other arm. But she searched for a long time, unable to find a clear patch, and started to panic. Shinji immediately grabbed the woman's hand. "Don't worry," the panic in her eyes turned to confusion. "What are you saying? I'm getting you out of here." Shinji took the woman's hand and started towards the door. The woman followed him for a few steps, then pulled away, ran to the wall, took down the clean clothes, and clutched them tightly. Shinji walked over and said softly, "I'm taking you to see her." The third update is here. This week is crucial, the last chance for Sanjiang for this book. Please support me. Don't just bookmark it. Ask for recommendations, monthly tickets, and follows. Remember to turn to the last page to count as a follow. End of this chapter. Chapter 86. Get Out. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It took Shinji forever to calm her down. She wasn't just hurt physically, mentally, she was on the verge of a complete breakdown. The only thing keeping her going seemed to be Xianglin's clothes clutched in her arms. Shinji knew he had to tread carefully. Pushing her too hard could backfire. Once she calmed down a little, he subtly used his Manjikyu Sharingan to knock her unconscious. Sigh. He let out a breath. In her condition, there was no way Xianglin could finish the mission and get back to Grass Village. It was obvious that Grass Village didn't give a damn about her and her daughter, or their survival. They decided to use Karen's mom to blackmail her into stealing back the 9 tails. Then, after Karen successfully recovered the 9 tails from the rogue leaf ninja, they'd quietly take the beast and she'd be dead. That way, they could snag the 9 tails without directly picking a fight with the Leaf Village. Their only losses would be 2 outsider women. Shinji wanted to unleash Susanoo right then and there, wreck Grass Village, and squash those insects, but he knew that would blow everything out of the water. If things got too hot and his cover as a leaf spy was blown, who knew what might happen to Ninja? After all, she'd been forced to help him assassinate Naruto. If her identity was revealed, Leaf Village would definitely investigate. Besides, Xianglin's mom was in no shape for any more drama. Best to stage an accident, make Grass Village think she's dead. That way, she can ditch this life and find somewhere to live in peace. With that in mind, Shinji formed a plan. After a while, there was another knock at the door. Shinji opened it and let the guy in. "Daisuke, back from your mission?" The guy walked into the room, greeting Shinji. Then he asked, "Where's the woman?" Shinji decked him. Bang. The grass ninja, floored by Shinji's punch, crashed through the wooden door and landed outside. Before he could even react, Shinji was on top of him, pounding him with his fists, yelling, "You bastard, how dare you insult me!" Finally, the beaten grass ninja came to his senses. He kicked Shinji off him and roared, "Daisuke, are you crazy, you son of a bitch? You're pushing me too far." Shinji pulled out a kunai and went after him. Seeing Shinji's kunai, the grass ninja didn't waste any time. He grabbed his own from his pouch and met him head-on. The fight quickly drew a crowd. They seemed to be fighting for real, eyes full of hate, so nobody dared to step in and break it up. Just then, Shinji pulled out a huge string of explosive tags from his pouch. "I'm taking you with me." The crowd went pale and scattered. The grass ninja, who'd been blinded by rage, finally snapped out of it, realized that Daisuke was acting weird, and yelled, "Run!" But before he could finish, the flames from the explosion engulfed him and several nearby houses, swallowed up in the continuous blasts. Far off in the woods, standing on a tree branch, Shinji watched the fire tear through the night in Grass Village. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Ninja intrigue, hurting the innocent. Has a nice ring to it. Then he jumped down. Xianglin's mom was leaning against a big tree, still out cold, while Coldball was tending to her wounds. Seeing Shinji approach, Coldball said, "No dice. My medical ninjutsu isn't working on her wounds." Shinji looked at her haggard face. She's totally drained. Our young chakra is too different from hers. It's no use. Coldball was silent. That someone with such unique young chakra could be so drained made him think pigs could fly. Let's go. Shinji bent down to pick up Xianglin's mom, to make sure her hut was completely blown to bits. Shinji had used almost all the explosive tags on his shadow clone, then had the clone start a fight and detonate the tags outside her hut. It looked like the grass ninja were fighting among themselves. Then he killed Daisuke Chunin, who'd been tied up beforehand. That way, there were plenty of witnesses to the cause of the fire. And the huge explosion destroyed all the clues. Plus, Grass Village didn't really care much about Karen's mom, so the end result would probably be nothing. She could fake her death and finally live the peaceful life she dreamed of. Of course, Grass Ninja would definitely hide it from Xianglin, use her mom, and keep blackmailing her. After all, Karen, stuck in the Leaf Village, couldn't verify whether her mom was dead or alive. And when she went back to Grass Village, she'd probably have already completed the mission. At that point, Grass Village would get rid of Xianglin, too. After traveling for miles away from Grass Village, Shinji found a secluded spot, woke Karen's mom, and then used his genjutsu again, entering her mind. She was very weak, both physically and mentally. Shinji hesitated for a long time, then decided to use his illusion to seal away some of her painful memories, so she could find some peace of mind. He used his Manjikyu Sharingan to seal away most of her experiences in Grass Village and create a false memory. In this fake memory, she took Karen and left Grass Village. On the way, they ran into Jiraiya, who was traveling the world, and she asked him to take Karen to Leaf Village, making her a real ninja. After that, Shinji made another seal and created a shadow clone. He had to get back to the village before dawn, so he had the shadow clone escort Xianglin's mom to the land of fire to find a safe town to live in. Luckily, she no longer had the Uzumaki clan's iconic red hair, so there was no worry about being recognized by someone who knew the deal. Chapter 87 Right and Wrong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Using a shadow clone, Shinji teleported the coal ball back to his apartment. Then, the coal ball used its reverse psychic ability to bring Shinji's real body from the land of grass back to the apartment as well. Back in the apartment, Shinji released the shadow clone. He then told the coal ball, "Help my shadow clone settle the woman. If anything goes wrong, try to reverse psychic me back there." Got it. Briquette nodded. It was already familiar with the reverse psychic technique. It carried a small bag containing Shinji's blood. As long as the blood hadn't completely dried, it could reverse psychic Shinji back anytime, anywhere. After giving Briquette a few more instructions, Shinji released the psychic connection and sent it back to the land of grass. He glanced at the clock and saw it was still early. He activated Jibi to share the good news with Xianglin in the Jibi projection space, but soon after, he sensed a third point besides Bai and Xianglin. Didera got rid of the white blood cells? He wondered, instantly overjoyed. His Jibi only tracked the spiritual bodies of Bai, Xianglin, and Didera. So, the new point had to be Didera, who had finally entered his Jibi detection range. Even though he was eager to get the white blood cells, Shinji held back and connected with Xianglin first. A moment later, Xianglin's spiritual body appeared in front of the round table. Seeing Shinji, Xianglin tensed up immediately. "My lord, I'm sorry, I haven't mastered the nature transformation of the water and earth chakra types yet. I can't use wood release." Seeing Xianglin's apprehensive expression, Shinji felt a pang of guilt. After Vortex Village was destroyed, how much had this mother and daughter suffered, living in a foreign land? Xianglin didn't realize the emotions hidden behind Shinji's mask. She assumed he was unhappy with her progress, so she quickly promised, "My lord, I'll definitely work harder." Shinji waved his hand. "I contacted you this time because I have other news." Xianglin sat down obediently, looking at Shinji expectantly. "I found your mother." Shinji paused, then said calmly, "She's been rescued from Kusanagi village." Xianglin, who had just sat down, jumped up. "Really? That's wonderful." Shinji didn't hold back. "She wasn't in good shape when I found her." Xianglin grew worried. "Is she alright?" "Her chakra was severely depleted, her red hair has turned white, and she was on the verge of collapse." Shinji emphasized, "Kusanagi never intended to let her live. I think you understand what that means, right?" "My lord, did my mother and I do something wrong? Why would they do this to us?" Xianglin clenched her fists, tears streaming down her face. Shinji didn't answer. Her words reminded him of the cruel scene of the strong preying on the weak he'd witnessed recently. What had the world of the strong done wrong? It was just the law of the jungle. He couldn't give Xianglin an easy answer. Finally, Shinji said, "I caused a distraction in Kusanagi village. They probably think your mother died in the chaos, so they won't be looking for her for now." Wiping her tears, Xianglin asked hesitantly, "My lord, can I see my mother?" Shinji nodded. "I'll arrange it." Relieved, Xianglin immediately asked, "What should I do next?" Shinji stared at her. "That's up to you." "My choice," Shinji said casually. "Kusanagi village won't give up their plan easily. They'll continue using your mother to force you to do things for them. If you run away or show any signs that you know what happened to your mother, they'll come after both of you." Xianglin understood her situation instantly. To ensure her mother could live in peace, she had to pretend she didn't know anything. Only then would Kusanagi leave her mother alone. Shinji said, "Your mother sheltered you in exchange for Kusanagi accepting you. Now it's your turn to protect her. As for what's right or wrong, when you're strong enough, you can confront them yourself and demand answers." Xianglin wiped away her tears. "I understand." Shinji paused, then decided to be upfront. "I acquired a special cell that contains the chakra of the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. If you can handle it, your strength will increase dramatically." Xianglin nodded without hesitation. "My lord, I'm willing to try." Shinji stopped her. "I want you to accept this special cell to enhance your healing abilities and restore the pair of kaleidoscope Sharingan eyes that I transplanted to you earlier. That's my main goal. Of course, you'll also benefit from it, and your strength will be greatly improved." Shinji suspected that the healing abilities of both Kaorin and her mother were of exceptionally high quality, almost to the point where a single bite could heal a fatal wound, but quantity-wise, they were average. Nagato, another member of the Uzumaki clan, was the opposite. His healing abilities were lower in quality but far greater in quantity. The first Hokage possessed both quality and quantity, large amounts of powerful chakra. So, if Xianglin could withstand the white blood cells, the strength of her healing abilities would be immense. Even Shinji couldn't predict the outcome. Xianglin carefully considered Shinji's words and nodded again. "I'm willing to accept the transplant. There are risks involved in transplanting special cells, and I won't hide that from you," Shinji warned. "But with your unique healing abilities and the kaleidoscope Sharingan, the risks should be much smaller for you. The high-quality chakra contained in the kaleidoscope Sharingan could balance the yang chakra in the white cells, combined with the strong vitality of the Uzumaki clan." Shinji believed the transplant operation wouldn't pose a significant threat to Xianglin. Contrary to Shinji's expectations, Xianglin answered even faster this time. "My lord, when can we do the transplant?" Clearly, Xianglin was no longer the weak girl she used to be. Her mother's tragic experience had made her eager to grow stronger, so she could confront those people in Kusanagi village and demand justice. She wanted to ask them why they treated her and her mother so cruelly. Chapter 88. Please read more. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I've heard some people say today's a make or break day. How this chapter performs will decide whether I get on Sanjiang's recommended list next week. So please, flip to the last page. Every view counts. I was down in the dumps last week because I lost 10 views. This week is my last shot, so I'm counting on you all. Lastly, thanks for all the support these past few days, the recommendations, the monthly votes, I appreciate every bit of it. Thanks. Chapter 89 Difficult Guy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After severing the connection with Xianglin's spirit form, Shinji sat quietly in his directly adjacent space, feeling a little empty. Things had gone better than expected, but he wasn't exactly celebrating. He saw Xianglin and her mother's situation not as a fluke, but as typical of the ninja world, and it wasn't just them. Wasn't he a Uchiha remnant himself? At the Ninja Academy, Shiro was a Snow Clan survivor. Naruto lost his parents at birth. Neji watched his father die at 5. Even Cheyenne, who seemed carefree, was desperate for affection. The ninja world needed a shake-up. To cut down on the pointless fighting. The idea began to take root. Then he remembered that Dawn mission that had echoed in his ears when he first woke up. What's the deal with Dawn? Thought he'd asked Light about it, but got nothing back. Pushing those thoughts aside, Shinji focused, reactivated GP, and started searching for Deidara's spirit form. Bingo. The connection was made. Suddenly, the quiet directly adjacent space had another projection. Huh? Where am I? Deidara wasn't scared. He was looking around with curiosity. Leaning back in his stone chair, Shinji said calmly, "This is a special space where our inner circle members can talk. No need to worry about secrets getting out." Deidara was impressed. "I didn't know tech like this existed. It's kind of like the Phantom Lantern body technique that the Outer Ring leader uses." That he got it. Unlike Bai and Xianglin, he understood how the directly adjacent space worked without needing Shinji to spell it out. Instantly, he looked at Shinji with even more respect. At first, he hadn't given Akatsuki much thought. Honestly, with his devil-may-care attitude, Shinji was the only member he really cared about. But after a while in the Akatsuki organization, he realized it was way stronger than he'd imagined. Forget the leader with the rumored Sage of the Six Paths eyes. The other members were all S-rank criminals with serious reputations, and because of Shinji, he'd always thought of his Akatsuki team as just the outer fringe, which only made him more impressed by the organization's overall power. Then Deidara noticed the round table and the 7 seats. So, 7 members total, including me. Curious, Deidara took an empty seat. Shinji was eager to confirm if Deidara had gotten the leukocytes, but he played it cool. "Anything weird going on with the outer team lately?" he asked. Deidara perked up. "Weird is the new normal. No one's normal in the outer ring, except for me, yeah, right asterisk," Shinji thought. Deidara continued, "By the way, who are you having me watch? Who's on our side out there? And who should I be looking out for?" That was a problem. Meeting Deidara had been a total fluke. The whole monitoring people in the outer ring thing was just something he'd made up on the spot. Now that Deidara was pressing him, he didn't have an answer. After a beat, he said, "Just remember, don't trust any Uchiha." Deidara gave Shinji a hard look, then leaned back, putting some distance between them. Shinji rolled his eyes. "Dude, I'm the Uchiha telling you to watch out. Any Uchiha in the outer ring besides Itachi?" Deidara frowned. "I didn't know about that. That's why I told you to keep your insider status quiet," Shinji said. Deidara rubbed his chin, looking serious. "Got it. I'll be careful." Shinji quickly changed the subject. "How's that task I gave you coming?" "Done." Shinji was thrilled, but tried not to show it. "They didn't catch on, did they?" Deidara shrugged. "Probably not. I went off on him because he was watching me, so he probably just thought I was being a jerk. But that guy's cell tissue is really something else. I could feel some major yang release chakra on it." Shinji realized he'd underestimated Deidara a bit. He dropped the subject, quickly discussed the handover, and ended the call with Deidara. as soon as Deidara's spirit projection vanished, Shinji dropped the calm act, jumped up, and pumped his fist. I'm getting leukocytes. The Xianlin problem was handled, and the leukocytes were within reach. He'd been waiting anxiously for days, and now it was all falling into place. He felt like he'd won the lottery. He also secretly congratulated himself on his impulsive decision to pose as an Akatsuki recruiter and bring in Deidara. It seemed to be paying off big time now. In a hotel room in a small town, after being out of it for a whole day, Deidara finally snapped back to reality. The inner circle really is more mysterious than the outer circle, he thought. Then he frowned. Besides Itachi, there's another Uchiha hiding in the outer ring. In the woods outside the town, a figure wearing a one-eyed mask stood on a tree branch, watching the town where Deidara was holed up. A second figure emerged from the tree trunk, slowly showing half his body. Deidara hasn't come out since he went into that hotel. It was Obito and Zetsu. No doubt, Deidara thought he was hiding the truth from Zetsu, but Zetsu's perception skills were among the best in Akatsuki. He'd quickly realized Deidara was hiding the white blood cells, so, Obito and Zetsu had followed Deidara all the way to this little town. Did he meet up with anyone? Obito asked. Zetsu shook his head. Strange. What's he up to? Obito frowned. Deidara's actions were throwing him off. He couldn't tell if it was just Deidara being crazy or if someone had ordered him to do this. White Zetsu said, he's a crazy pyrotechnic guy. Nothing he does would surprise me. Black Zetsu said, it's not that simple. Obito confirmed, Itachi recruited him, right? White Zetsu nodded. Yeah. It was Itachi, Kisame Hoshigaki, and Sasori who went together. Obito's eyes narrowed. Could Itachi be investigating something? Ugh, what a pain. Chapter 90 Preparation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shinji didn't know Kazuha Obito was aware of Deidara's white blood cell theft, or that Obito blamed Itachi for it. Per their agreement in the directly adjacent space, Deidara didn't deliver the stolen cells himself. He used a clay spider to discreetly transport them to a forest. That's why, when Deidara left town on his clay bird, Obito and Ju hastily followed, leaving no time to check the town. 3 days later, in the dead of night, Briquette used transmission to sneak into the forest, find Deidara's clay spider, and retrieve the white blood cells contained in a small petri dish. Back at the apartment, Shinji, having timed it perfectly, bit his finger and performed the summoning jutsu. Bang, star, Briquette appeared in a puff of white smoke. Did you get it? Shinji asked. Briquette pulled the petri dish from his small bag and handed it to Shinji. See this thing? Shinji quickly took the petri dish, opened the lid for a closer look, and then sighed in relief. This small cluster of white cells was easy to identify. One look confirmed it was the real deal, incredibly active. With his Sharingan's insight, he could even observe their subtle movements, which were vastly different from any cellular structure he'd seen in the lab. Briquette leaned in curiously. What is it? Can I eat it? Shinji gave him a light smack on the head. All you ever think about is food. Briquette sulked. You know how to order a cat around, but you never give it anything. Cheapskate. I heard that. Shinji said, then immediately asked, how's that woman settling in? Shinji's chakra was limited, preventing him from maintaining the shadow clone for long. So, after entering the land of fire, he tasked Briquette with arranging Xianlin's mother's living situation. I set her up in a small town near the cat's hometown, Briquette said. Bought a little cabin for her with the money you gave me. As Shinji secured the white blood cells, he asked, is she doing okay? Briquette nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, her complexion's improved a lot in the last few days. Shinji felt relieved. After all, Xianlin's mother was from the Uzumaki clan. As long as she wasn't constantly overdrawing her chakra, her lost vitality might recover, and at least her life should be safe. Early the next morning, Shinji skipped the ninja school and went straight to the medical lab because he'd been spending every day in the lab. Kaoru Kusanagi had helped him apply for his own dedicated space. After locking the door, Shinji retrieved the leukocytes and started running tests with the lab equipment. With each test, Shinji's eyes grew wider, while recording data. He thought, cell activity is 28 times higher than normal, division speed is 5 times faster, and peak chakra fluctuations are over 60 times higher. This is unbelievable. Normal people here didn't mean ordinary villagers. In the medical class's data, normal people were those with at least some ninja talent, and the white blood cells completely dwarfed ordinary ninjas in every aspect. Biologically, the gap between leukocytes and ordinary ninja cells was greater than the gap between human and pig cells. Suddenly, Shinji collected the white blood cells, cleared the instrument data, and went to find Kaoru Kusanagi. What? You want the first Hokage's cell data? Kaoru Kusanagi looked surprised. Shinji quickly explained, I've been doing transplant experiments recently. I saw in the old files that the village did a cell transplant experiment on the first Hokage, but all the data's sealed. I don't have enough clearance. Kaoru Kusanagi looked embarrassed. Everything about that experiment is confidential. Even I need to apply to higher-ups, and it might not even get approved. Shinji said, I just want the first Hokage's cell data, not the whole experiment file. Kaoru Kusanagi thought for a moment. Okay, I'll apply for it. Konoha's medical class had detailed records of the first Hokage's cell data. Shinji had even heard that living cells from the first Hokage were still sealed in the medical class's warehouse, but previous experiments with the first Hokage's cells had gone terribly wrong, so the village sealed them off and suspended all related experiments. Even Kaoru Kusanagi couldn't access them anymore, but if it was just the data, Kaoru Kusanagi could get it. That afternoon, Kaoru Kusanagi gave Shinji the data, warning him not to take it out of the lab. After getting the first Hokage's cell data, Shinji immediately compared it to the leukocyte data. In cell activity, the first Hokage's cells were over 80 times higher than normal, division speed was 40 times faster, and peak chakra was nearly 100 times higher. Isn't this a human-tailed beast? No, it's even more exaggerated. No wonder Madara and the Ninetales couldn't beat the first Hokage. Shinji was speechless. The data was simply ridiculous. The leukocytes that had previously seemed so powerful paled in comparison to the first Hokage's cells. No wonder so few people can handle the first Hokage's cells. It's understandable. Anyone who survived, like Yamato, is a statistical miracle. Shinji sighed, relieved he'd chosen leukocytes. The first Hokage's cells were too overwhelming, exceeding the scope of normal biological cells. Even if someone's body could accommodate them, they couldn't tap into their full potential. In contrast, the leukocytes, at 1/3 to 1/4 the power of the first Hokage's cells, were much milder. Over the next 3 days, Shinji conducted over 100 fusion tests of his cells and the leukocytes in a petri dish. The results were encouraging. The fusion rate was over 50%. Considering Xianglin's Sharingan, which could balance the yang-release chakra in the white cells, the fusion rate could increase by another 20 to 30%. With a success rate of around 80%, it was practically guaranteed to work. So, after nearly a week of preparation, Shinji donned his Akatsuki cloak, put on a mask, and entered Xianglin's room late that night.